Shanann's family, fighting for justice after the murders. What happens when the person you love most betrays you in the worst way imaginable? Welcome to Dark Truths, true crime stories where we dig into the cases that break hearts and spark questions. In 2018, Shanann Watts and her two little girls were taken from this world by her own husband, Chris Watts. But today, we're not focusing on him. We're talking about Shanann's family, the Rzuceks, who turned their unbearable grief into a fight for justice. How do you keep going after losing everything? Hit that subscribe button, and let's find out together. The Rzucek family before the tragedy. Let's start at the beginning with the Rzuceks, Frank and Sandy, Shanann's parents and their son, Frankie Jr. They were a tight-knit family from North Carolina, the kind who'd gather for Sunday dinners and share every big moment together. Frank worked hard as a contractor. Sandy was the heart of the home, and Shanann was their shining star, a daughter who dreamed big and loved fiercely. Shanann grew up with a spark that lit up any room. She was outgoing, driven, always chasing her goals. When she met Chris Watts in 2010, the Rzuceks welcomed him, hoping he'd be the partner she deserved. Then came Bella and Celeste, their granddaughters, who brought so much joy. Sandy would tell friends how those girls were her world. Bella with her sweet smile, Celeste with her boundless energy. They had dreams for their family, holidays together, watching the girls grow, maybe even welcoming more grandkids. Shanann's move to Colorado in 2013 put some distance between them, but the love never faded. They'd call, text, visit whenever they could. It was a normal, loving family, full of hope, but all of that was about to change in a way they could never have imagined. Can you picture that kind of bond, the kind that feels unbreakable, until it's tested by something unthinkable? Learning the unthinkable. August 13th, 2018, started like any other day for the Rzuceks, until it didn't. Shanann and the girls were reported missing from their home in Frederick, Colorado. Frank and Sandy were in North Carolina, miles away when they got the call. It was like the ground dropped out from under them. Sandy later said her heart just stopped. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. They tried calling Shanann, texting her, hoping for any sign she was okay. Nothing. The panic set in fast. Was it a kidnapping? An accident? They clung to hope, but the silence was deafening. Frank told a reporter, "We just wanted answers. Where are they?" They called Chris, their son-in-law, begging for information, but his answers were vague, off somehow. The Rzuceks hopped on a plane to Colorado, desperate to help search. They didn't know yet that the truth was far worse than they could imagine. How do you keep going when your daughter and grandkids are gone, and you don't even know why? The false hope from Chris Watts. At first, Chris Watts played the part of the worried husband perfectly. He stood on his porch, facing TV cameras, pleading for Shanann, Bella, and Celeste to come home. The Rzuceks wanted to believe him. They had to. He was family, the father of their grandkids. Sandy later said she prayed he was telling the truth, that he was as scared as they were. But something wasn't right. Frank noticed Chris seemed too calm, too rehearsed. Shanann's friends were raising alarms too, telling the Rzuceks about her suspicions of Chris's affair. Frankie Jr., Shanann's brother, felt in his gut Chris wasn't acting like a man who'd lost everything. In text to friends, Shanann had mentioned Chris pulling away, acting distant. The Rzuceks started to wonder, was he hiding something? Those early days were a blur of hope and dread. They wanted to trust Chris, but the red flags kept piling up. Have you ever had that sinking feeling when someone you trust starts to seem like a stranger? That's where the Rzuceks were, caught between hope and fear. The confession and collapse. Then came the confession that shattered everything. On August 15, 2018, just 2 days after the disappearance, Chris admitted to killing Shanann. At first, he claimed she'd strangled Bella and Celeste after he asked for a separation, and he killed her in a rage. The Rzuceks were floored. Sandy told a friend, "It was like my heart broke into a million pieces." But then the truth got worse. Chris confessed to murdering all three, Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, and disposing of their bodies at an oil site. Frank said it felt like the world ended. They'd lost their daughter, their granddaughters, and their unborn grandson, Nico, all at the hands of someone they trusted. The Rzuceks collapsed under the weight of it. Sandy couldn't stop crying. Frank couldn't find words. They wanted justice, answers, anything to make sense of the senseless. How do you even begin to process that kind of betrayal? Can you imagine the pain of losing your entire family in one brutal moment? Public grief and media attention. The Watts case exploded into a media frenzy. News trucks parked outside the Rzuceks Hotel in Colorado, cameras following their every move. Reporters wanted their tears, their anger, their story. For Frank and Sandy, it was overwhelming. They were grieving, but the world was watching. They tried to stay strong, giving brief statements to keep the focus on Shanann and the girls. Sandy told KMGH she was a wonderful soul, a loving mother. But every interview felt like reliving the nightmare. Frankie Jr. took to social media, sharing memories of his sister and nieces, trying to keep their light alive amidst the chaos. The attention was a double-edged sword. It kept the case in the spotlight, pushing for justice, but also stripped away their privacy. Every move they made was dissected online in forums, on X. How do you grieve when the whole world's watching? How do you hold it together when every headline rips the wound open again? Standing up for Shanann's reputation. As if the grief wasn't enough, the Rzuceks faced something else. People blaming Shanann, online trolls, and even Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie Watts, suggested she was controlling, that she somehow pushed Chris to kill. The Rzuceks were furious. Sandy told a reporter, "Those lies are vicious. Shanann was a victim, not a villain." Frankie Jr. was especially vocal, posting on Facebook to defend his sister. He shared stories of her love for Bella and Celeste, her hard work, her dreams. The Rzuceks refused to let anyone tarnish her memory. They put out statements through media, calling out false narratives and demanding respect for Shanann's legacy. It wasn't just about clearing her name, it was about protecting the truth. Shanann was a vibrant woman, a devoted mom, not the caricature some tried to paint. Have you ever had to stand up for someone you love against lies? That's what the Rzuceks were fighting for, even as their hearts were breaking. The impact on Shanann's brother, Frankie Jr. Shanann's younger brother, Frankie Jr., was hit hard by the murders. He was close to his sister, looked up to her, and adored Bella and Celeste. When they went missing, he was frantic, posting on social media, begging for information. When Chris confessed, Frankie's world turned upside down. He took to Facebook, sharing raw, emotional posts about his sister and nieces. "She was my everything," he wrote about Shanann. "Those girls were my heart." His posts were a mix of grief and anger, calling out Chris and anyone who dared blame Shanann. He wasn't just mourning, he was fighting to keep their memory pure. Frankie's pain was public, raw, and real. He didn't hide his tears or his rage, and that resonated with thousands who followed his updates. He became a voice of family, a young man carrying a heavy burden. Can you imagine losing your sister and nieces like that, and still finding the strength to speak out? The Courtroom Confrontation. November 19, 2018, was a day the Rzuceks will never forget. It was Chris Watts' sentencing hearing, and they came face to face with a man who took their family. Chris had taken a plea deal 9 charges, including first-degree murder, for 5 life sentences without parole. The Rzuceks stood in that courtroom, staring at him, their grief and anger laid bare. They delivered victim impact statements, pouring out their pain. Frank looked at Chris and said he'd trusted him, welcomed him, only to be betrayed. Sandy spoke through tears, saying she'd never forgive the evil he brought into their lives. The courtroom was silent, the weight of their words heavy in the air. Chris barely looked at them, head down, no response. The Rzuceks demanded accountability, and the judge delivered life without parole. But justice didn't erase the pain. How do you face the person who destroyed your family? What does it take to stand tall in a moment like that? The emotional victim statements. Let's dive deeper into those victim impact statements, because they were the heart of that courtroom moment. Sandy's words cut like a knife. She talked about Shanann's love for her girls, how she'd light up when Bella sang or Celeste giggled. "You took all that away," she told Chris, her voice breaking but strong. Frank spoke about the betrayal, how he'd treated Chris like a son. He said he'd never understand why Chris threw away everything they'd built as a family. Frankie Jr.'s statement was raw, angry. He called Chris a heartless monster who didn't deserve mercy. Those statements weren't just words. They were a cry from the soul, a demand of the world to see Shanann, Bella, and Celeste as more than victims. They were a family loved beyond measure. Can you feel the weight of that moment, standing in front of a killer, speaking for those who can't? Choosing to forgive. Here's where the story takes a turn that shocked a lot of people. In their statements, the Rzuceks said they forgave Chris Watts. Sandy told the court, "I forgive you because that's what my faith tells me to do." Frank echoed her, saying they didn't want to carry hate in their hearts. Forgiveness didn't mean excusing him. It was about freeing themselves from the poison of anger. Sandy later told Dr. Phil it was a choice to honor Shanann's memory, to live with love instead of bitterness. But they still wanted justice. Forgiveness and accountability weren't the same thing. That decision blew people away. Some admired it, seeing it as strength. Others couldn't understand, how do you forgive someone who took your daughter and grandkids? What does it take to find that kind of grace in the face of so much pain? Facing online harassment. The Rzuceks' pain didn't stop with the courtroom. Online, they face a new kind of cruelty. Trolls on Reddit and X spread conspiracy theories, claiming Shanann provoked Chris, or even that the Rzuceks were somehow involved. Cindy and Ronnie Watts' interviews, hinting at Shanann's control, fueled the fire. Frankie Jr. called it out on social media, saying the lies were like losing Shanann all over again. Sandy and Frank stayed quieter, but felt every jab. They were grieving, yet had to defend their daughter from strangers who didn't know her. Posts on X called them attention seekers, while Reddit threads spun wild stories with no proof. It was a digital battle they didn't ask for. How do you keep your head up when the internet turns your loss into a circus? Can you imagine fighting for your loved one's memory while the world throws stones? Legal action against the harassers. The Rzuceks weren't going to let the lies slide. They took legal action, filing lawsuits against defamers who spread false stories about Shanann. One case targeted a YouTuber who claimed Shanann was abusive, dragging her name through the mud for clicks. The Rzuceks' lawyer told the media they wanted to stop the vicious slander and protect their family's truth. These lawsuits weren't just about punishment, they were about setting a precedent. The Rzuceks wanted to show that victims' families shouldn't have to endure harassment on top of grief. Frankie Jr. posted online, "We're fighting for Shanann, Bella, and Cece." It was a bold stand, one that took courage. Legal battles are tough, especially when you're already broken. What would you do if you had to sue to protect your loved one's name? How much strength does it take to fight back like that? Advocating for victims' rights. Out of their pain, the Rzuceks found a purpose. They became advocates for victims of domestic violence and family abuse. Sandy started speaking at local events. sharing Shanann's story to raise awareness about coercive control, the subtle ways abusers manipulate their partners. Frank joined her, talking about the signs they miss in Chris, like his emotional distance. They work with organizations to push for stronger protections for victims, better laws, more resources. Frankie Jr. used his social media platform to spread the message, urging followers to learn the red flags of abuse. Their goal? To save others from the fate Shanann faced. It's like they turned their grief into a mission. Can you imagine channeling that kind of loss into helping others? What does it take to turn pain into action? Creating a legacy for Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. The Rzuceks didn't want Shanann, Bella, and Celeste to be remembered just as victims. They started campaigns to honor their lives. Sandy and Frank set up a memorial fund in their names, raising money for domestic violence shelters. They organized vigils, where friends and strangers lit candles and shared stories of Shanann's warmth and the girls' laughter. Frankie Jr. launched a social media campaign, #ShineLikeShanann, encouraging people to share acts of kindness in her memory. It caught on, with thousands posting about love, family, and resilience. The Rzuceks wanted their legacy to be about light, not darkness. It's a powerful way to keep their memory alive. How do you honor someone you've lost? Can you turn tragedy into something that inspires others? Staying connected through memories. Memories became the Rzuceks' lifeline. Sandy and Frank shared videos and photos of Shanann, and the girls online Bella singing, Celeste running around, Shanann laughing with her family. They posted on Facebook, saying, "This is who they were, full of life." Frankie Jr. shared stories too, like how Shanann would call him just to chat, or how the girls would giggle during video calls. These posts weren't just for them, they were for the world. A reminder of the love that defines Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. Sharing memories helped them heal, even if just a little. It's like they were keeping their family close, even in grief. Have you ever held on to a memory to keep someone alive in your heart? How do you find comfort when the loss is so big? The pain that never leaves. 7 years later, the pain is still there. Sandy has said she wakes up every day thinking of Shanann and the girls. Frank carries a quiet grief, often staring at their photos in silence. Frankie Jr. posts about the hole in his heart that never fills. They've found ways to cope: therapy, faith, advocacy, but the loss is permanent. Holidays are the hardest, when the absence of Bella and Celeste's laughter feels like a weight. Sandy told a friend, "It's like I'm living two lives, one here and one with them in my heart." Grief like that doesn't fade. It changes you. How do you keep going when the pain never stops? Can you ever really heal from a loss that big? Speaking at events and conferences. The Rzuceks took their story to the public, speaking at domestic violence events and conferences. Sandy shared Shanann's story at shelters, talking about the warning signs of abuse like Chris's emotional withdrawal and secret affair. Frank spoke about the guilt of not seeing it sooner, urging others to trust their instincts. Frankie Jr. joined them, speaking to younger audiences about recognizing manipulation and coercive control. Their talks weren't just about their loss, they were about saving lives. They partnered with groups like the National Domestic Violence Hotline, hoping to make a difference. It's incredible, isn't it? Turning personal tragedy into a warning for others. What kind of strength does it take to stand on a stage and relive your pain to help strangers? Their faith in justice and God. Faith has been a cornerstone for the Rzuceks. Sandy and Frank are devout Christians, and they lean on God to get through the darkest days. Sandy told Dr. Phil, "My faith keeps me standing." They prayed for strength, for justice, and for the ability to forgive. Their belief in justice wasn't just about Chris's sentence. It was about ensuring Shanann's story helped others. They saw God's hand in their advocacy, believing it was their calling to honor their family through action. Frankie Jr. shared Bible verses online, saying faith helped him find purpose in the pain. Faith gave him a path forward, but it didn't erase the hurt. How do you find hope in something bigger when your world's been shattered? Can belief carry you through the worst moments? What they want the world to remember. The Rzuceks don't want Shanann, Bella, and Celeste remembered as victims. They want the world to know Shanann as a vibrant woman who loved her family, who worked hard, who dreamed of a big, beautiful life. Bella was a sensitive soul, always singing. Celeste was a firecracker, full of energy. Nico, their unborn grandson, was a promise of more love. Sandy told a reporter, "They were our light. That's what people should know." Frankie Jr. posted, "Don't let the headlines define them. They were love, laughter, everything good." The Rzuceks want their legacy to inspire, to remind us to cherish our families and fight for what's right. It's a powerful wish, isn't it? To redefine a tragedy through love. What would you want a world to remember about the people you love most? Love never dies. In the face of a tragedy that could have broken them, the Rzuceks chose to fight for justice, for truth, for Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. Their courage turned grief into a mission, their love into a legacy that shines bright even in the darkest moments. They remind us that even when evil tries to win, love can still rise above. Thanks for joining us on this emotional journey here on Dark Truths, True Crime Stories. If the Rzucek story moved you, hit that like button and drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of their fight for justice? Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for more true crime stories that hit deep. We've got plenty more coming your way, so stay with us. Until next time, keep seeking the truth